Hi, I'm Duncan Moss, and I'd like to welcome you to my latest video blog. Today, I'll be doing something a little bit different. I'll be talking about my love and admiration for the French author Jules Verne. He was born in 1828. 19th century was a very important decade for lots of things, engineering and also literature. More and more people were learning to read. There was more of a demand uh, for things to read, particularly stories. And Jules Verne was his love for adventure. I think came very very early in his life. When he was quite small, he went to a boarding school, which was run by a headmistress called just trying to think where Madame Samba, I think we pronounce it, and she was a widow. Well, she didn't believe she was a widow. Her husband had been lost at sea many years, some 30 years ago, and she always believed that he'd been was a castaway on a desert island, and that one day he would be rescued and come back into her life again. And this helped to fuel, I think, Jules Verne's uh, passion for great stories. And his early works, which were published in the early 1850s, he was influenced very much by James Fenimore Cooper, who was the guy who wrote Last of the Mohicans. He was also influenced very much by Victor Hugo of Les Miserables and Hunchback of Notre Dame fame. And he was also a great admirer of Alexander Dumas, of the Man in the Iron Mask and the Three and the Four Musketeers, who he actually met and became quite friendly with. He was also would become friends with someone who would be publishing quite a lot of work, quite a lot later in the 19th century, and that's H.G. Wells. Although they never met, I don't think, they became good pen friends, and they used to write to each other, commenting on each other's work. I hope they were respectful. I'm sure they were polite and respectful for each other, because otherwise it wouldn't have lasted. And his main publisher in France was a guy called Pierre Jules Hetzel. I hope I've pronounced that rightly. And he offered Jules Verne the choice of being paid a lump sum for each story, and then the books would become owned by his publisher. And Jules Verne felt at the time that he wanted that. It would give him a steady and secure income, because the contract went on for years. And it's during this time, I think, that he published some of his greatest stories. Journey to the Centre of the Earth, published in 1864, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was published in 1870. That involves, it's actually 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, plural. And all the films always call it one sea, which I suppose it is theory, it is one sea, but Around the World in 80 Days, one of the greatest travelogues ever written in 1872. He also wrote plays, short stories, poetry, songs, and literary studies and political pamphlets. So he was a very, very busy man indeed. What had happened in the basically the 18th century? The world had been getting a bit smaller, in the sense that there was more travel being done, and there were more stories written about people who travel. We had basically Robinson Crusoe, which was published, and I have it here. I made a note of it, and I cannot find it because this is what happens when you try and do something like this. The notes you write are never going to be where you want everything. Oh, goodness me. Oh, heck. Well, his other stories were that in 1851, his first two books were The First Ships of the Mexican Navy and A Voyage in a Balloon. Those were his first two books. And his father wanted him to go into the legal family legal business, but he did do some exams, but his heart wasn't in it, and he was really doing it just to please his dad. So, and in the end, it fizzled out anyway. He wrote a book, From the Earth to the Moon, in 1865. That's basically 104 years before NASA succeeded in doing it, which is an incredible achievement. I think he even worked out how much power and thrust was needed to get an object of a certain size through the Earth, away from the Earth's gravitational pull. The stories that have been published before Jules Verne's time are things like The Coral Island and Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. And basically, these stories were written about people who became castaways on islands, and a lot of them had lots of religious overtones in the fact that Robinson Crusoe runs away from home, doesn't want to go into escape from, doesn't want to follow his dad's advice about going into an office job, a respectable job. He wants a job at sea, and the being wrecked on the island is a sort of God's discipline to him, and then providing him with all the booty out of the wreck so that he can survive. That's basically a lot of them had. And Coral Island by, is it G.M. Ballantyne, I think? That again has three of the characters, I think. Is it Ralph, Peterkin, and Jack are all God-fearing men. And of course we had Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. And in that, Gulliver gets into all sorts of trouble, but he carries on moving all over the place. And so these stories about travel were getting very popular. And Gulliver's Travels even has a sort of spaceship in it. And I think it was published in 17-something, so that really was a sort of the beginning of science fiction was creeping into a lot of people's works. And so travel was, particularly in the second half of the 19th century, when Jules Verne's work was being very well received. There was a lot of travel going on, and sort of adventure stories involving lots of travel were becoming very, very popular. And Jules Verne is, I think, he's either the second or the first, the major. He's the most, either the second most or the most translated author in the world. And his books were started to be translated in quite early on in the 1860s and 70s. Unfortunately, a lot of them were English was one of the main languages they were translating in, or they were doing other languages as well. He was very popular in Russia. What they did was they were very sloppily translated into English, and the stories were brilliant. We've got an undersea submarine, or a submarine in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We've got an airship in Master of the World, and we've got tunneling under the earth in Journey to the Center of the Earth. We've got just travel right around the world in 80 days. So they really were high adventure, the highest kind. And very sadly, I think the British, English, and American publishers can take some of the blame for this. They considered Jules Verne's work very lightweight, what they call juvenile literature, which is basically boys' own adventures. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's better to call, in this day and age, to call them family entertainment. I personally think that the books were great for being read to a family, and with decent translations, of which I've got a few. He translates really well. His narrative flows particularly well. Certainly does in English. Here I've got Journey to the Center of the Earth, and then The Mysterious Island. I haven't read all of these, the only two that I've actually read are Journey to the Center of the Earth and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But I can't wait to read the others. It's just a question of finding the time. Then we've got Around the World in 80 Days, and it's also got 5 Weeks in a Balloon as a double bill. And I've also got From the Earth to the Moon. And From the Earth to the Moon and Around the Moon. I don't know whether that's two stories or whether it's one with a very long title. As I say, I don't know everything about Jules Verne, but I don't want to, because I want to whet your appetite so that you'll enjoy reading them. And of course, he died in 1905, just as cinema was in its infancy, so he never really saw any of the great versions of some of his works, like the 1959 film Journey to the Center of the Earth, which had James Mason playing Professor Lindenbrook and playing him beautifully, playing him as a very arrogant chauvinist, almost male chauvinist pig in some respects. And then we've got, in 1953, earlier than that, of course, he played Captain Nemo in the fantastic Disney adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas. There was Mysterious Island was made into a great film with Ray Harryhausen providing some rather oversized crabs and things. And I'm not saying anything because I don't know. Some of the films may be very different from the books. So as I say, if you read them, I don't think you're going to be disillusioned with them. His work was considered to be boys' own adventures in his other countries. In France, he was incredibly well respected by both his publishers and his audiences, and he received in 1870 the French Legion of Honor. And I would say that he's really, as being with his adventure stories, I would say that he is the Jerry Anderson and Owen Allen of his day. And by that I mean Jerry Anderson with his television shows using supermarionation a form of puppetry, plus his live action works, very much capture very much capture that family adventure. UFO was one of his live action films. Sorry, I'm bubbling. And then we've also got Owen Allen, who at the same time was making live action shows like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, The Time Tunnel, Lost in Space, and Land of the Giants. And of course, Lost in Space has the Space Family Robinson, but Owen Allen in the 70s, he went to the Castaway of the 19th century, and he did the TV series The Swiss Family Robinson. But all of these people in pretty much apart from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, they're all groups of people who get marooned somewhere, either in a different time or on a parallel universe, or just in good old outer space. But they capture the family high adventure as television producers in a way that I don't think many producers have done. I mean, maybe Doctor Who, but I think this is the sad thing about the television of our television today. The family audience has been very shortchanged, at least as far as the television's concerned. And that would be nice if we had a few more television series captured in that imagination. As I say, Jules Verne's son also had success. Some people think that one of Jules Verne's stories was actually written by his son. I'm not quite sure which one that was. I think it was in Invasion of the Sea, or one of his last works was Lighthouse at the End of the World. That's the one they think that his son may have written. He also did a book that was had a book published in the 1990s that was in a vault. It was in a vault, and it never got. It was in a vault for over 100 years. And what happened was that the publisher thought it was about the stock markets, publisher thought it wasn't commercial enough and it would bore people, so they left it. But it did get eventually discovered in the 1990s. So well over 100 years after the work had been written, it finally finds a publisher, which is nice. He liked travelling. He didn't travel as much as people thought, but he had his own yachts, and his last they all called Saint Michel, and his yacht was the Saint Michel III. That's the one he went around in Europe in. He did visit the UK. So he, as I say, he probably, if he hadn't been writing so much, I think he probably would have travelled a lot more. But I remember having a laugh with my friend Adam Masters, because when Journey to the Centre of the Earth was originally shown on British TV, and we couldn't see it. We had visitors, and Mum decided to turn it off just at the exciting bit where they were whizzing around in the whirlpool. So I counted the days before the BBC put it on again. I think it was 18 months later. And Adam was saying to me, "Oh, Duncan, I don't understand why you think so much about this film. It was so badly made." And I said to him, "Yeah, it may not be a masterpiece, but it is blinking good fun." And that's what I think Jules Verne, he was a good writer, but he knew how to entertain and give people fun. And I think I say boys' own adventure. I think ladies will enjoy them just as much as guys. I'm not into this "it's a boys" thing stuff. Well, I've rambled on a little bit and lost my way a little bit. I said I'm still looking for what year Gulliver's Travels was published. I know I wrote it down. I just cannot see it in this load of notes that I've written, but it doesn't really matter, because this is about Jules Verne and not about anybody else. Edgar Rice Burroughs was certainly very heavily influenced by Jules Verne. He of Tarzan fame and loads of other things as well. But if I can persuade people to read Jules Verne books and maybe see a few of the films that are based on his work, but do look at the literature of all these people, because that's where these films, without these people, we wouldn't have these films. So I'll be talking about a few other science fiction authors in future, but I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. As I say, God bless and happy reading.